welcome to another bonus episode of Sports and Songs podcast. I'm your host, Dan. Today's class here on March 10th, 2021 is going to be an introductory course on amateur baseball in the state of Minnesota. Big thing here in the state. Many know about it, many do not know about it. And many think they know about it, but don't know all there is to know about it. This will also be helpful if you're from out of town or thinking of going to some of these games in the state of Minnesota. Big, long history. Let's go back to the history. Town ball has been played in Minnesota since the 1920s. Town ball enjoyed its peak of popularity in the 1940s and 50s, with as many as 799 teams participating in the 1950 season. The first town baseball team in Minnesota is believed to have been Ninegers in 1857, although many towns in Minnesota have fielded baseball teams continuously since the 1880s. Town ball as we know it really came into existence in 1924 with the organization of the state tournament, masterminded by the St. Paul Pioneer Press and the St. Paul Dispatch. Both of those writers, named Roy Dunlap and Lou McKenna, put this tournament together. 1 year later, the AMABL was formed as a governing body for town ball in Minnesota. This organization still exists today as the Minnesota Baseball Association, or the MBA. Number of teams and leagues operating in Minnesota peaked between the end of World War II and the arrival of Minnesota's new Major League Baseball team, the Minnesota Twins, in 1961. Since the minimum number of players required to field a team for a single game with no substitutions is 9, then at least 7,191, and in actuality a much higher number, individuals participated in Minnesota town ball in the peak year 1950. That was huge. Almost 800 teams. Let's take a look at today, amateur baseball in Minnesota, also known as town ball. Teams in the state right now, 275. There's an actual Hall of Fame located in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Town ball and town team baseball began in 1857. There's actually a record of the very first state tournament 10 years later that was held in 1867. Of the 275 teams currently in baseball in 2021, they're broken down by 3 classes. Class A, 36 teams. Class B, 30. And Class C, 209. Now if you take a look at the Class A, in parentheses is the 494-694 freeway loop. For those from out of town or not familiar with the Twin Cities metro area, Minneapolis and St. Paul, both are surrounded by freeways called 494 and 694, in other words called the Loop. Those teams in Class A can only draw players really from inside that loop. Those that live in the Twin Cities metro area with inside that loop are eligible to be on the Class A teams. Class B and C can be made up of players outside that loop. Class B is only 30. Class C is the most popular. 209 teams from around the state. Teams play in leagues throughout the state of Minnesota. There are 32 leagues in the state. Regular season games begin near the end of April each year. Teams play all through the month of May, June, and July. Playoffs are in August, with the state tournament ending on Labor Day weekend. The actual championship game is actually on Labor Day itself. To play in the state tournament is always the goal of the teams, and at the end of the year, premier sites get selected to host these state tournament games at the end of the year. They're selected, I think it's 3 or 4 years in advance. Three years for sure in advance. This coming year, Labor Day weekend and towards the end of August, you can watch games in person in Waconia, Chaska Athletic Park, and Hamburg. Now, players that play actually have a contract. Yes, you can only be on one team. You can't be on multiple teams. Each team has to have this piece of paper filled out for every player on their team. So it's really just a contract. They're amateur, not pro, so no one's being paid. But of these 275 teams, everyone on those teams has to have a contract on each one of the players. Yes, and when they leave or retire, they still fill out a release form. A release form. Actually, to close them out. So this was an introductory course on Minnesota amateur baseball in the state of Minnesota. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and our blog. Once again, this is Dan. Today's March 10th, 2021. Hope you enjoyed the Amateur Baseball in Minnesota in Introductory Course, brought to you by Sports and Songs. Please leave your questions and comments below.